Welcome to EO Talks, Eastern Oregon's very own talk show, only here on EOAlive.
First off, please tell us your name and which office you're running for.
Hi, my name's Reed Christensen, and I'm currently running for Oregon governor.
Now, what do you do professionally?
Well, I'm recently retired. I retired in May of 2021, and that that was from working 30 years basically at Intel here in the Hillsboro area. I've been an electrical engineer, came up here in 1989 with my family, and worked in the high-tech industry here, essentially doing processor designs for Intel, and did that for almost the entire 30 years. I took a few years off to try to start a software company, and then ended up going back to Intel. But I'm an electrical engineer by trade.
Now, can you tell us, do you have any public service or political party leadership background?
Yeah, I'm new to politics in some sense, especially as a candidate. I've always been a follower of politics and news. In fact, one of the things that I'm glad that I did and had a lot of fun doing was when my wife and I were going to school together, we got ourselves elected as precinct committee people in Whitman County in Washington State, at Washington State University. And we helped get Whitman County behind Ronald Reagan. And there was a surge of grassroots support for him. Of course, the main party wasn't interested in him necessarily, so it was a grassroots effort to get him on the ticket. So we did that when we were in college, back when we were 21, 22. And then, of course, went in the military, raised 5 kids, and all that entails, and all the business that includes. And so really wasn't involved as the political party, the Republicans, until, maybe 5 years ago, when I started helping with local campaigns, walking with candidates and passing out materials. And then I was secretary for the Washington County Republicans for 3 years. But I hadn't really seriously thought about trying to run for an office until probably the things that I've seen in the last few years kind of pushed me over the edge.
Can we hear a little bit more about your biography?
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, so, okay, well, I'll give you a little bit of, so I don't know how many people know what a design team does at Intel, but that was all my professional life was essentially testing logic. I've been on the validation side of things in a processor design team. So Intel is producing, the highest technology in the world, which is, these advanced processors that every 18 months they double in their capacity. And I was involved in that way back in 1989. In fact, I was involved in the first chip design that Intel did that was powerful enough that they were able to use it as a server and be able to not just have it in a PC platform, but actually be a mainstream server. And I've been in the validation side, which is to say you've got a team usually divided in half. You got half the team that tries to write code, essentially logic code that will become a processor, and then you have the other half of the team that's involved in testing that code and making sure that it's doing what it's supposed to. So I've been on the validation side of things for many years at Intel. And then, of course, while we're doing that, we raised our 5 kids here. I got a master's degree at Brigham Young University, 1987 to 89, and then came up here with our 5 kids and essentially raised them all. All of them were, I think my oldest boy was 9 when we got here, and our youngest was a baby. So we raised all our kids here in Oregon, sent them to Oregon schools. We were active in our church, active in scouting. In fact, all of my 4 boys, I'm very proud to say, obtained Eagle Scout. I've got a nice picture of us I was an Eagle Scout as well, so we have a nice picture of all 5 of us in our Eagle Scout uniforms. And essentially just active in our church and community. And like I said, just been probably the last 5 years that I got active in the political side of things. And I guess another biography point of interest would be that I've always been interested in history. I've been an avid reader my whole life. My dad was raised on a dairy, and on a dairy you're always working. And I remember one of the funny things when I was younger is I used to have to hide in order to read books, because if my dad saw me sitting around, he assumed I needed something to do, so he'd give me some jobs to do. But seeing some of the things happening here in America recently, especially with this pandemic nonsense that's been going on, using it as a reason to take away inalienable rights as Americans, is frightening to me because of the things that I've seen in history. And it looks like to me that America's trotting down the same path that other countries have gone down that ended up in very bad places.
Can you tell me more about your community of Hillsboro?
Well, Hillsboro. It was a small place when we moved here. It felt like it was out in the country when we first drove up here to look at housing and to settle down here in May of 1989. It was 30,000 people. It's a small town, and it really felt like you were coming out to the country when you drove from the airport and had to drive 12, 15 miles out here to Hillsboro. It felt like you were going out in the country, and it had a small town feel to it that had, I think, a closeness that we really enjoyed, and we've enjoyed living and working here in Hillsboro. Of course, that's changed a lot. Now when you drive from Portland out here, it seems like you never leave the city. It's just one continuous development all the way out. So it's changed a lot. But it's been a good place for us to raise our family.
As you talk to Oregonians, what issues are you hearing them say they want the next governor to focus on?
Well, so I've got some thoughts about that, and some of them, like I said, get me a little worried. I'd say one of the things that people ask me that really makes me worried for Oregon and for America are people asking me the question, well, when you're governor, are you going to stop the mandates? And I think about that, and I think, is that really the place we're at in America? Is that our only hope to stop doing things like having your right to your business destroyed? The government telling you that you have to close down, you can't open your business. The government telling you that you have to have an injection that is a life and death medical decision, that the government can tell you you have to do that, that the government can close down your church for a year. I spent my whole life going to church. I never missed church. And I was absolutely appalled that I couldn't go to church for a year because the state of Oregon decided that it was too dangerous, made that decision for me. Made a spiritual decision that hadn't, over what I would want to do, but they claimed the right to do that. And we've seen Oregon do this, and your response as an Oregonian is to hope that the next dictator will be benevolent, and the next dictator will give you permission to exercise these rights, to decide whether or not to wear a mask, or decide whether or not to get an injection, decide whether or not to get to church. That your only choice, your only hope to having any of these inalienable rights back is that some governor will be a benevolent dictator and give them back to you. I mean, I just, when I hear that kind of stuff, it just boggles my mind. where are we as Americans? Where are we as Oregonians, where we look to the government for permission to do these things? And I hear that this is coming from Republicans. So I, can't imagine what the other half of the state thinks about inalienable rights and our rights as Americans. They must think that, the government can give them to us or take them away from us whenever they want. So it's been a little saddening, I think, to realize that there's a lot of Oregonians that still don't get it, that we have very possibly lost America. I guess I could tell you what I think what that means is, when you ask people, what is America? I'd say it's what Abraham Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address: of the people, for the people, by the people. In other words, for the first time in 5,000 years of atrocious human history, people decided that political power should come from the people, not from some cabal of people, self-appointed sultans of superiority who called themselves elites, and that they had the right to order everybody around and take their money and take their lives in endless wars, and that we weren't going to do that anymore, that we were going to get political legitimacy. It was going to come from the voice of the people. And it's amazing to me how, when everyone talks about January 6th and how terrible it was, nobody seems to care that the heart of America, which is the people deciding, the voice of the people deciding in an open and free manner who the leader is going to be, that was stabbed in the heart. America was stabbed in the heart. America, if not dead, it's in the ICU. We can pretend like we're living in a free country where we have a sham election every 2 or 4 years, and yet we here in Oregon we have an election system where we don't know who's doing the voting. We don't know who's putting in the ballots. Is it 1 county or 2 counties or 5 counties that are totally corrupt and putting in whatever votes they want? We don't know. And yet we all seem fine with that. That we don't have a transparently honest election system, to be convinced that Oregonians are ready to lose their rights. And so in some sense, it's been, I think, slightly disappointing and a little frightening how few Oregonians realize where we're at in this country.
Who is your favorite Oregon historical figure?
Oregon historical figure. Well, it's probably the golden guy on top of the Capitol. And I guess what I mean by that is that I think that's the spirit of Oregon, is that people were willing to, throw their goods in the back of a wagon and walk 2,000 miles and face terrible dangers of thirst and disease and Indian attack and just starvation, and walk 2,000 miles to come to the promise of a better land. And what I would say that exhibits is the ability to stand on your own. There wasn't, a government agency of, transportation, holding your hand as you came across there. These were independent people who were willing to make their own decisions, who put their own effort and their own capital and their own livelihoods and their own lives on the line to come out here and to make a new life. And so I guess it would be the pioneer Oregonian would be my hero.
What is the primary source of your personal values?
Well, I've been a religious person my whole life. I firmly believe that America had a special founding. we're so spoiled in our modern society. For my entire life, the 50s, 60s, and the 40 years since then, we've had amazing freedoms. The world has basically accepted the fact that democracy, which means that people is the source of political power. People have accepted democracy around the world. In fact, you could probably, be fairly safe to say that there's not a person, excuse me, getting over a cold. There's probably not a person in the world who would argue with the fact that that real political legitimacy comes from people, the voice of the people deciding. And yet that's an anomaly. That's a short blip in human history. For 5,000 years of recorded human history, the power came from people who had the evil in their heart to kill and murder and torture other people until they got power. I mean, I don't know if you're a YouTube fan, Alex, but there was lots of YouTube channels about battles, bosses battles, and kings and generals, and there's all kinds of them. But every time you watch one of these things, it gets a little monotonous, because every single one of them, almost without fail, is some king getting together, his guys to go beat on his brother or to kill his father so that he can get power. And that's where political power came from. And 99% of the human race was just there as pawns. They were there to be providing fodder for the army and to have their food and lands stolen so the king can have the means that he needs to wage war against people and to build his palace. But this was everywhere you went, it doesn't matter. You could watch what Genghis Khan did, or what happened in China, what happened in Africa. Every place you went in world history, it was a small cabal of power-hungry people declaring themselves rulers and taking control and stealing, and that's how political power was determined. And to me, the founding of America was the 5,000-year leap, that it opened the floodgate to people realizing that no, it was not a divine right of kings, that's a bunch of nonsense, that God wanted his people, he wanted his children to be free, to be responsible for their own sins and their own actions. And he didn't want some small cabal of powerful people treating everybody else as slaves. So to me, the founding of America was divinely inspired, and that there were people that the Lord set aside his best children, the smartest and bravest people that he could, to send down here at the same time so that they could found America. And I've had that belief my whole life, and I believe my study of the scriptures reinforced that. And I would say that is something that I've always believed and haven't changed. And I think it's true.
Do you anticipate any criticisms from your opponents, and do you have any responses to these potential criticisms?
Yeah, well, I had an interview with a reporter last night, and his headline was basically something like, "Man accused of assaulting officer is running for governor." So I was involved in January 6th. I made an effort to break the line that they were trying to keep people off the steps. I believed it was an appropriate response to get up on the steps of the Capitol and wave the flag, and I did the best I could to try to get past that line. I didn't assault anybody. I didn't see anybody in my area that was assaulting officers. And funny thing, I saw officers spraying people, but I didn't see any officers assaulting people where I was either, vice versa. But I'd have to say one of the funny things that came out of that was an email to my website where a fellow said, well, I'm a Trump supporter, but I don't see how someone who assaults officers could be running for governor. And I think, well, that's interesting. You have a lot of faith in believing what the government says after what we've seen the last few years. Because I haven't been convicted of anything. The FBI is, lobbing charges around that, they'll have to prove in a court. What I saw were patriotic people getting up the steps of the Capitol to wave the flag and to indicate that they were not happy with the political so-called leaders in this country who did nothing to take care of the corruption that happened in that election and the crooked court systems who didn't do anything to stop it either. So yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a few things like that.
Alrighty, next up is our world famous lightning round. So first off, ducks or beavers?
Say again?
Ducks or beavers?
Well, I'm frankly the most unsporty guy in the world. I've always been an intellectual kind of person, reading books kind of thing. I did participate in football in high school. Excuse me. Because I had a goal of wanting to go to the Air Force Academy, and at the time, you were supposed to have extracurricular activities.
Gotcha.
But I'm sorry, but I'm not a sports guy, and I really don't follow any sports.
What is your favorite Oregon landmark?
Well, I've had one of the great things that we did while we were here in Oregon is I put 4 boys through scouting, and that meant for that meant for 8 years I was scoutmaster, and every month we'd go camping. And it's just amazing that you can, for all those years and for all those months, you can go camping and still find places you've never seen that are just beautiful and wonderful. And I don't know, one of the things that my wife and I are doing, we've bought a mobile home, and we're using it to travel around to talk to people around the state. And I don't know if I have a favorite, but Oregon's got wonderful state parks, and it's amazing how good they are, how little money the state puts in them compared to where they throw their money for everything else. But it's such a beautiful state. And in '96, I had a 7-year sabbatical from Intel, so we threw the kids in a travel van, and we spent 7 weeks traveling around the country. And I'd have to say that there's maybe the Teton Mountains was one of the places we felt like was somehow equivalent to Oregon, but the rest, everywhere we went, nothing compared to Oregon. So I just say it's the natural beauty and the things that we can enjoy here in Oregon in the outdoors.
Gotcha. Do you have a favorite Oregon beer?
Oh, I'm not a drinker, so
okay.
Sorry.
Well, then, I'm
a teetotaler.
Gotcha.
Say again?
Well, what is your favorite Oregon-based food or beverage? Something that originates from the state.
Well, I like Tillamook cheese. I'm a big fan of Tillamook cheese. Excuse me. And enjoyed going out there over the years with our family to partake of the ice cream and the cheese with the kids. So
nice. And what is your favorite place in Eastern Oregon?
Well, I think the Blue Mountains are just amazing. Amazing. Love traveling through there, and it's when you come off of those Blue Mountains, you overlook Pendleton, and get a view into the state, and it really I think helps you appreciate how the pioneers must have felt, after walking 2,000 miles and finally get into one of the last major obstacles and being able to see the state of Oregon in front of them. That's one of my favorite sites.
Do you have any final thoughts for our viewers, and can you let them know how they can get in touch with you?
Well, yeah, I have a website. It's called Save the Kid, One Kid, SaveTheKid.com. And I have what I call a Charter of Liberty out there, which is a list of 15 items that I think need to be done to bring freedom and prosperity back to Oregon, and encourage people to take a look at those and get on the website and contact me if they have questions about it.